I'm John Batchelor, Larry Kudlow, my colleague and co-host, and Sudeep Reddy of the Wall Street Journal. The jobs number last week, we're reporting on the jobs growth between the middle of a month and middle of the month, but we call it the April jobs number. The jobs number was okay. It certainly is better than we saw the month before. But Sudeep, I note, and this is the Wall Street Journal's metric, the average jobs added this year are considerably lower than the average jobs added last year. Is that a significant warning that we're slowing down? Is that part of the mystery of this recovery?
Well, it's a important question of whether we're slowing down in job growth for reasons that have to do with with outside forces, whether it's the global economy or things happening at home, or whether we're slowing down because we're getting closer to full employment. The Federal Reserve, in its latest gauge, puts full employment at 5% to 5.2% unemployment rate. So we're at 5.4% right now. Some people say it's actually 4.5%, or maybe even 4% is the full employment rate. And so that's the big question right now: is are we heading toward that sense that we've gotten everything we can out of the labor market? And if you get to that point, then the natural rate of monthly job growth is certainly going to slow down from where we are now. But because we have all these other cross currents that are weighing on us, it's leading some people rightly to worry about whether there are some other factors at play.
Well, I have a somewhat different view. I don't think we're anywhere near full employment, even though the unemployment rate looks low at 5.4%. There's an awful lot of people that have dropped out of the labor force. The larger unemployment rate, the labor impairment rate, the U6 rate, which includes people that want better jobs, it includes people that have given up and walked away, that thing is still at 10.8%. In other words, it's double the unemployment rate. And that's unusual, to put it mildly. That's unusual, and that's one of the reasons why the participation rates are still low and the employment to population ratio is still low. I mean, look, I would simply say this. There's no recession. There's no boom. I don't think there's any inflation. I don't think we'll see the Fed. We won't see the Fed until September. And this is still a grinding 2 to 2.5% economy. That's the way I see it.
And Sudeep, is there expectation that we're going to grow more than this next year or the year after? And does that doubt inhibit companies from spending money, from capital investment, or just hiring?
Well, if you look at the last 5 years of the recovery, there was an expectation in each year that we would grow stronger than we did in the prior year, that we might even get to 3.5–4% growth at some point coming out of a very deep recession. We obviously have not gotten to that point. We've seen growth between 2 and 2.5%. It's fairly modest growth. It's been a grinding pickup. We've seen job growth pick up at least in 2014, but it hasn't been all that remarkable before that. So the real question is, why have companies been so hesitant in the years out of the recession to go and invest? Is it longer run? Are there longer run concerns that they're seeing? Is it just the fact that they see better opportunities abroad to invest in? That's the big question. Why is business investment so low? Why are companies buying back their stock instead of going and investing more in new products and new equipment and all the things that might improve their prospects in the longer run?
You know, John, it's a really great point that you're asking about business investment. I mean, CapEx is probably the single softest part of the economy right now. In fact, in the durable goods report, capital expenditures, adjusted for aircraft and defense, they've fallen the last 7 months.
This is money that companies spend to grow on themselves.
Indeed, and
right.
As Sudeep suggested, this is generally longer-term investment. I mean, I think you're looking at 5 to 7 or 8 year horizons to complete these projects, and it's not happening. I don't think there's much confidence around. That's one point. Second point is, businesses are very profitable, and even though profits have slowed or flattened, they're almost at record highs still, and they're being taxed at a high rate. And we got nowhere with corporate tax reform this year. It's not even on the schedule. It's not even on the agenda. And as you noted, firms are keeping their cash overseas.
Right.
Well, that's not because of great business going on in Europe or Japan. It's because they want the lower tax rate. And we have to confront this. This CapEx thing may be a problem unless and until we start treating our businesses as hospitably as other countries treat their businesses.
And Sudeep, tax reform, Larry touches upon it. Would that make companies spend money? The idea of tax reform, thinking it was credible, they would get out front of it?
If you actually got tax reform, you might see companies step up, certain kinds of companies, depending on how the tax overhaul is structured. But I don't think any companies are going to look at a debate in Washington and the prospect of it and see any hope. Just look at what we're seeing in trade. The one thing where companies really haven't stepped up in any full-throated way to back trade, even though most of the big companies of America would support something like this, they haven't devoted much capital to getting something like this done because they think it's fairly obvious that it should get done, and they think it will get done. So on something that is a much heavier lift politically on taxes, where it's not just winning over lawmakers and winning over some skeptical lawmakers both in the House and the Senate. It's a matter of fighting with each other and pushing each other down and making sure that they're not carving out special loopholes and deals for different kinds of companies. And that's where tax reform gets really thorny and really ugly.
Well, I think Paul Ryan, the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, which writes the tax laws, I think he still intends to report out a bill out of committee next month, John, and hoping for a floor vote in the House, which would pass, and then push it over to the Senate. I think that's still his plan, although he has expressed frustration. And I think Sudeep is right. You know, the chances of getting anything through are very, very, very low. And I think that's one of the issues. You know, we talk so much about corporate tax reform during the election, and the Republicans take the House and the Senate. The president has some tax reform in his budget, and nothing has come of it. So in that sense, it's an obstacle for these companies to make any long-range investments. They don't know what's going to happen.
And therefore, it's wisdom to keep the money in your pocket, then.
It's wisdom to keep the money in your pocket, and, John, it may be even greater wisdom to keep your money in your foreign pocket.
To keep it, that's why we're not seeing the jobs growth here, then.
Well, in part. I mean, there are other things going on in the world, but in part, I would blame it on a lack of confidence. You know, our friend and colleague Ed Lazier from Stanford.
We have 10 seconds left.
All right. He noted, and he's right, hours worked have slowed down. That's not a good sign for the jobs.
Larry Kudlow, Sudeep Reddy of the Wall Street Journal. I thank you, gentlemen. I'm John Batchelor. This is The John Batchelor Show.